So I do want to celebrate success because yesterday you focused your reteach on closing the gap that students were not introducing the quote. So in these writing samples, students were doing more of it across the board. So what in your planning and then also in your execution led to that?
I think by identifying that with them and just showing them two examples side by side of here's one where it actually introduces the context, here's one that doesn't. Which one's easier to read and helps you know what's going on.
Great. And in the guided discourse, you had students name the error and had students name the solution and the one that had the gap. There was an awesome moment where Julian was like, they just basically paraphrased the quote. And the kids said, oh, and you called in another kid and said, okay, what's the thing we're not going to do? And the kid said the thing. So that was pretty great.
Yeah.
Okay, so as you know, we're going to look at yesterday's exit ticket, and this aligns to that pre-AP learning objective, analyzing how literary elements interact. That's the big one, how literary elements interact to develop the central idea. So this one is the one that we picked because it's most directly aligned with the end of unit assessment where they have to characterize the memories of that person. So this one, let me just read the thing. They are stating how Alvarez uses figurative language to characterize their relationship. So let's look at your exemplar to start. I believe it's right here, right? That's number 2.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So what do students need to know and do in order to demonstrate mastery of this learning objective?
Can I read from my list that I
Mm-hmm.
made? Sorry, I was not prepared for that question, but I know I did it. Do you have it pulled up?
The lesson plan?
The sheet I filled out. I got
Yes.
it. It's okay. The first thing, they need to know different types of figurative language. So,
Which one specifically?
well, it varies, but for this one, they could have used imagery. They should have used imagery on this one. When characterizing the individual, make sure to look at what they say, how that character interacts with others around them. So that's, or especially in this case with Minerva and Sunita. First character trait they recognize may not always be the strongest one. This is something we've worked on extensively, and it's also, I think, aligns to the problem that I'm seeing on the IAs, where students will see an answer or a part of the text that looks like it could be the answer, but it may not always be the strongest answer.
Or they play like match and say like, oh, I've seen this before in the text, I'm picking this.
What?
When they see a detail, they'll pick one that they know they've seen, but it might necessarily be the one in your face.
Yeah, and they'll just, and sometimes they just don't read the whole passage, which is really important that they do, because then it's the bigger picture. And then finally, a written response must include a claim, introduce, quote, and analysis.
Great, so what do they need to do in order to demonstrate mastery?
Recognize, not just know the different types, but be able to recognize it, the different types of figurative language and context, draw conclusions and inferences based on evidence in the text, introduce the quote chosen by building context for the reader, and then also explain in the analysis how that quote demonstrates the claim to be true.
Great. I had all those things. The only thing that I did differently was when you have them on number 4 on your paper for the no, a written response must include a claim, introduce, quote, and analysis. That's something that the kiddos actually have to do. So I have that on the do side. You're saying they need to know that.
I'm saying they need to know that's what their written response should look like. Like they have to understand, when I ask for a response, those are the 3 things, those are 3 elements that they must include.
So I think they should know that because they're not given CFS on this one. But I guess it could go in both columns. They also need to do the thing. Okay, semantics. Okay, so what are the thinking steps students need to go through their head then? Knowing all that, what are the thinking steps students need to go through their head to break down this prompt?
So this is something, we worked on this today, especially because I realized their answers did not answer the actual prompt. So the first thing they had to do was understand that they need to identify that they're looking at the relationship between Minerva and Sunita. A lot of them actually just characterize Minerva and Sunita individually without mentioning the actual relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a key thing. they had to do number one. Number two, once they're able to characterize the relationship, they need to go back to the text and figure out, okay, what parts of or what pieces of figurative language appear here that help establish that characterization.
Great. Okay. So in the interest of time, we're not going to go through the student works because we talked about it earlier today. So across the board, what is the number one gap that students are having? You already said it just now, like 30 seconds ago, too.
Yeah, it's answering the prompt.
Great. And when I happen to look through all these papers, and if you were to go to look through, what evidence do we have that they know how to dissect the prompt?
If we were to look in there right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in class, I did mention that they need to actually look at the relationship, but I didn't have them, I don't see much evidence of annotating the actual prompt, and so I think that's something that moving forward we can definitely do, and I model and expect from them.
Great. So fill in the blank. Students are not fully answering the prompt because they are not doing what?
Annotating the prompt.
Great. So mastery is below 50%. So for this reason, you need to do a model. Yesterday was a good choice for discourse because you had enough of the class there that they could drive towards the answer. But given the case that 50%, less than 50% did, I think it's important to do a model.
Okay.
I see you scrunching your brows. Do you agree or disagree?
No, I agree. It's to the light.
Okay. Alright, so I have a quick video of a teacher breaking down a prompt. You actually saw this summer. It's our world video. Do you remember this?
I'm sure I
Okay.
remember as soon as I see it.
So what's effective, and he's breaking down an AP prompt, that's why I think it's helpful. So what's effective about how he breaks down the prompt for kiddos? Again, the marker's filling in. And just to name it, we're not gonna watch the first part of the video, it's the part where he says, guys, don't worry about my annotations, you should actually just be copying down the thinking steps that I take. You can also do the flip side of that and say, do copy down my annotations, but those are the directions he gave before this. Oops.
So, the first step I want to do is underline, circle, highlight keywords that will clue me into the time and place of the prompt. So, historians have traditionally labeled the period after the War of 1812 the era of good feelings. So, I see War of 1812, an era of good feelings. That might be pretty important to me. So I see those words and I'm immediately thinking about a time period, a topic and time period. War of 1812, but it says after the War of 1812. So I'm thinking about that period afterwards. I also know the era of good feelings is 1815 to about 1825. That also matches up with the last part of the prompt, where it says to consider evidence from that period. But the years alone don't really help me. I want to think about what's happening at that time in America. So when I think about the era of good feelings, I immediately start to think about nationalism through things like the Monroe Doctrine. That's all I can think of right now, so I'm going to keep going. Now, secondly, I want to think about the actual verb. What is it asking me to do? What is it requiring of me here? So I see evaluate the accuracy of this label. Evaluate is my verb. I think back to that chart for breaking down the prompt that we looked at in the do now. And evaluate means to make a judgment. To judge something. Well, what am I actually judging here, I wonder? Now I want to rewrite it as an actual question to make sure I really understand this. So, how can I reword this as a question? Well, I'm judging something. What am I judging? I'm judging whether this label, the era of good feelings, is accurate. Is it true? Was this really an era of good feelings? So, I might rewrite it as something like, did the period 1825 1815, excuse me, to 1825 truly represent an era of good feelings. Great, we'll pause there. What I'd like you to do right now is to talk at your table. What are the steps you pulled out? You could also consider the 3 questions that I put there for you at the bottom. Take just 1 minute at your table.
So what's effective about how he modeled for kiddos how to break down the prompt?
Well, I liked how he broke down things from a content level, so he was associating the different connotations that each word, or in this case time period, would have, and so having them actively start thinking about, thinking ahead about what those things would be they're writing about, but then also breaking down what they're actually being asked to do in the prompt. So I think he used the word, I think judging was in there, and analyzing, and so talking about what those words mean, but then the final step that he did is tying those do words back to the actual content and seeing how they would tie in together in response.
Great. Specifically, when he was breaking down what they're being asked to do, he taught them to circle the verb.
Mm-hmm.
And so that way,
Right.
What's the impact of teaching them how to circle a verb?
I think that it allows them to have a visual, maybe when they go back and look back at the prompt. Like for me, for example, sometimes I have to kind of make sure I'm looking back to make sure I'm on track, and so if they circle something, it's like a cue for them to make sure they're making sure that they are doing that thing, whether it be judging, analyzing, etc.
It's a visual cue and it's a transferable skill, because in every single class and every single content area, their prompt is going to have a verb, and so they can get in the habit of doing that. It's going to transfer to other things.
Yeah.
He also did not hide the ball. He was like, first I'm going to do this, second I'm going to do that. And then what did he do at the very end? This is feedback I gave you in last week in class. Did you catch that?
He stamped the, no, actually I don't remember what he did.
Of good feelings. Right now, is turn and talk at your table. What are the steps you pulled out? You could also consider the
Turn and talk
questions
about
that
the
I put
steps
for you at the bottom.
taken.
And why is that important?
Because it gives students a very concrete understanding of like what they should actually be doing. Actually, since I've done that, that's been really, really helpful, I think, for students since last week.
Because like the reality is we want to try to expose our kids to all the types of prompts they're going to see, but we can't actually do that. And so if they have this skill before they get to the EOC, for example, they can break down any prompt.
Yeah, and I think just when we show them something doesn't mean they can automatically just like decipher what it is that we actually did.
Right. So I looked ahead in your quarterly plan for the next time kiddos do have a prompt they're going to have to break down, and it looks like Tuesday. I just had it pulled up, but there's a prompt on Tuesday. So what I'd like you to do, based on what we just talked about, is re-script out your think aloud to include breaking down the prompt.
The exit ticket.
I believe there's a prompt like that you like model for them first, and then they do 2 rounds, and then they do the exit ticket. Yeah, sorry. Can you pull it up?
Oh, my.
Tuesday's
quarterly
lesson, yeah,
plan.
sorry, good what to do directions.
Oh, yeah. The 21st.
Was I right in that the prompt, another day they're gonna have to answer a prompt?
Based on the passage, compare and contrast the motivations of Minerva and Trujillo. How do their motivations provide insight into their character? Yeah, I think that'd be a really good one to break down, because it's,
We're also doing another weekly data meeting for that day.
yeah, I saw that. What, no, I should be doing something else.
Yep, so, for this.
Oh, yeah, we actually scripted it out now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm gonna add it in the exemplar.
Where are you editing? Sorry.
In the exemplar, so the very top of that lesson.
Because, so you're not gonna be able to model for them how to, are you gonna, I guess clarifying question, are you gonna like, shift it earlier so you can break down the exit ticket prompt before they do it? Or do you wanna do it in your lesson before they get to that?
I'll have to let me look at the monitor
Because
questions.
one of the things I was thinking is you could model the same thing for this question right here, like how to break down this prompt and what are DD's motivations, and you could like possibly tweak the question to.
I think we're in the same lesson.
I thought so.
On the launch, are you talking about the launch?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll do that.
So I think you could model the same thing using this question that's already in the existing lesson.
Yeah, I think what I found with this curriculum, however, is that it does not always, that skill would not necessarily be transferable to the exit ticket.
So how could we tweak this question to be transferable to the exit ticket?
I could say,
How would it
How
be, by the
does-
way?
yeah, how does, how do her, what are her motivations, how do her motivations provide insight into her character? Use the same exact verbiage.
And instead of saying how, maybe pick a verb. So analyze how, or something like that.
Okay. Okay. Done.
Great, and now script how you're gonna model for kiddos how to break down the prompt before you release them into like reading and writing on their own. Okay, I've been reading while you type. I think it's effective that you have like the clear steps that kids can follow. What I don't see is naming exactly what they're gonna annotate. So for example, the first thing I set it up,
so I've been like,
just say like I'm gonna always circle the keywords.
gotcha.
And then down for that third block, I'm gonna always, if you wanna stick with circle the verb, or I'm gonna always underline the verb, whatever it is.
Okay.
Just because like the more and more times you say that, like circle the keyword, circle the verb, the more likely they are to do it on their own.
Anything that relates to the content. Okay.
Okay, great, run it through once. You're not gonna have the paper or anything like that, but just practice it one time.
Okay, the first thing I noticed about this prompt is that I'm going to focus on Day and what motivates her. I'm going to always underline anything that relates to the content that I'm writing about. Using my prior knowledge, I already know that earlier in the book she is described as the safe one, the one who keeps things together. I'm going to want to tie this in to what I see her in this excerpt, does that make sense? Because it gives me a better understanding of who she is. How do I see about her in this excerpt? That's what I think. That's what I see about her in this excerpt because it gives me a better understanding of who she is. Next, I look at the word what. This word tells me I need to first list out what actually motivates her. This word is giving me an instruction, so I'm going to circle this word. Then the phrase analyze how they provide insight makes me think that I've got to explain how these motivations help characterize data and what additional things they convey to the reader. I'm going to circle this word as well because again, it tells me exactly what I should be doing when I answer the prompt. So make sure you are circling analyze. By the end of all this, I should have a deeper understanding of who data is.
Great, I just caught one more thing, sorry, what does the analyze mean? What are you gonna tell the kids?
Well, I thought I put it in there. Explain how these motivations help characterize data. So I'm like, I was basically interpreting it.
Yeah, maybe.
So
I
you're
guess
more
so. Like for
explicit?
me, it was about sentence placement then, because you go on and to say like I'm going to circle or analyze because again it tells me exactly what I should be doing. Remember that in this case, analyze means explain how.
Okay.
See what I mean? Or almost like move that sentence up.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd actually take that sentence and move it at the very start.
Done. Okay.
She said I'm going to circle or analyze because it tells me exactly what I'm going to do. Then, something about like what
I know
exactly that
that
means specifically for that prompt.
Analyze means explain.
Yep. Great. How is this going to close the gap of them not breaking down the prompts?
It's going to force them to really think through their prompt before they actually start writing, rather than getting kind of an impulse and just going thoughtlessly.
Great. And transferable thinking skills. Like if they can really get in this habit, they're going to do it with all the prompts. So you're doing this prompt on Tuesday, so I want you to talk about like a time for a reteach because it's embedded into your lesson. One thing I would like you to do starting on Tuesday though is on this exit ticket, since it was like the first data meeting we were doing, it was like, we could start with this prompt, but I'd like to get into more specific analysis, and so if you could start to put, you have a great CFS, like, I didn't print that off, but you have a very student-friendly CFS, but if you could put it on the paper, that's gonna help us when we do further analysis.
That's funny, yeah, I usually do, and this is the one I should have, you're right. I usually put a CFS in a rubric, but yeah.
Yeah, because that way, then when we're going through the work, we can just, honestly, that's sometimes what we do in the past is go through and make tick marks next to all the CFS, and then we'll see like, okay, 27 people didn't get this part of the CFS, that's what we're gonna zoom in on, and it's just to help, it's a quicker way to determine what the gap is if you put CFS. And then I have an idea for, this is also a quick hit, vocab. You know how I came over to you in the lunchroom and I said, how come all the kids are putting that they're close, and you said it's their limited vocabulary? I'm thinking about that, the do now that I gave in PD on Friday, the Sula one where they reread it.
Mm-hmm.
You could do something like, if you know, like for example in the end of unit assessment, how they have to characterize the person's memories. I don't remember off the top of my head what the exemplar responses are, but if there's some vocab words they don't know there, you could, and I'm sure they show up in the time of butterflies, you could say, like rumination, we'll just go with that one, like the definition of rumination is this, underline in the text where you see evidence of that, and just to get the kids used to the idea of like learning a new vocabulary word and applying it to where they find it in the text. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're basically doing a reverse context clues thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's great.
It's an idea for the do nows, because some of the do nows also suck on the AP for all, and they're like things that Mary are doing too in some cases.
Yeah, it's a tough balance between, because I want to keep holding them accountable for the do now.
Reading.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do now quizzes, because there's a lot I would like to do, so that's why I included that word meaning
Mhm.
skill question.
Mm-hmm. When you can,
Yeah.
incorporate that vocab.
One thing I thought of too, because I just thought of like, we have access to Chromebooks, like why can't they just like look up synonym for mean? Like, cause usually they have at least a base word.
I still think we need to build their vocabulary, because that's just some of the part of the challenge in the reading section of the ACT is they just like need to know more words.
Yeah, no, I agree. So you think I should
I'm
have
gonna end it, sorry.